Welcome to Conversations with Sarah. I'm Sarah Reddan of srtt.co.uk, your online space for personal development. And today I'm joined by Lorna Gell, holistic life coach and yogic practitioner. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
That's my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about what a holistic life coach or a holistic yoga life coach is, because this is a kind of a bit of a different approach to what I'm traditionally used to doing, and sort of with life coaching, and kind of from a different perspective, I think, from the yoga teacher that I've spoken to recently. So please tell me a little bit about you and sort of where you come from and what being a yoga life coach is.
Yes, hi, I'm Lorna Gell. I am currently residing in the southeast of England. I live in a town in Kent, and I'm fairly new to the yoga life coaching journey. I studied yoga for many years, and last year in the pandemic, in the lockdown, like many people, took up decided to stop waiting on a lot of those dreams and ambitions. So I started doing my yoga teacher training, and at the same time I was already finishing off my life coaching qualification. And as we did a deep dive into the yoga philosophies in my yoga teacher training, I kind of saw like there being so much overlap. And I was like, oh my goodness, the yoga teachings, the yoga philosophies, all these the stuff that's in the really ancient yoga texts, it to me it's a really complementary and almost like in a way almost the source of some of the coaching ideas and positive psychology things that are coming out at the moment. And so it seemed to me perfect to amalgamate my two sort of favorite things, the two things that have had the biggest impact on my life, to bring them together and see how they could work together. And so it's a really exciting journey for me. Obviously there's not a huge amount of stuff out there on doing yoga life coaching, so I have done a yoga life coaching course, but I'm also kind of working out my own way of how to deliver these two things together, which is really exciting, really creative.
And I think that's kind of where like the bringing of yourself into these practices is where it really sort of starts to shine, doesn't it? And being able to I mean, a guest and I were talking previously that kind of life coaching as an industry can be quite masculine and have quite a masculine energy, and yoga, the way I look at it, it's about balance and bringing those kind of two energies together. So bringing your own feminine energy, your own experience into that, I think gives it it's a melting pot, isn't it, of all of that is you and your training and the philosophies that you've learned along the way.
Yeah, it's really interesting that two of the words that you use there, balance and energy, they are two of my 4 values as that I want to take through in my business. So balance is something that's really important, and I think that combining the two for me creates balance both in my life but also for my clients. That it's there's lots of is it mind or body, there's lots of these kind of either or things, and I think that we could be a lot more mind and body. And working to facilitate everything. So the yoga brings a bit more of the body side of things with the what you expect from yoga, which is like the postures and the breathing, but also some of that spirituality as well, that kind of bigger picture things in your life. So for me it is about that balancing of those energies. So it's really interesting that you said those two things are really important.
I mean, that's just the sense that I got from having a little look around at you and speaking with you now. So it's just kind of my sense of what you were bringing. So there was some assumption in there So luckily I was in the right space.
I'm
I'd be really
I'm
curious.
so glad that I'm giving off these vibes.
I'd be really curious to know about the other two elements that you're bringing in there. So you said balance and energy. Are you happy to share the other two parts?
Yeah, so they're ease and enjoyment.
Perfect.
Because I think for me personally, like calmness and zen is something that I crave, but it's not like a natural, it's not my natural habitat. Like my life is quite busy and quite, I've got a lot going on. I've got 2 children under the age of 5. For me, creating this balance, it is about carving out these pockets of zen. I myself have fallen into that trap of, seeing people on Instagram and places like that where their life just looks so calm and serene.
Yeah.
And for me to try and create that in my life is actually like fighting against a lot of what's going on in my life. So for me, it's important to make things as easy as possible. And that some of that is like working with how like your brain is naturally wired and all that kind of thing. How can I make stuff as easy and as fun as possible, because life's too short to be basically fighting with yourself and having that inner conflict. I'm so over it.
I completely agree with you. It is about kind of finding that peace, and I think, like you said, when you look around at like the social media, like the guru type stuff, it can feel unattainable and such a big leap from where you are in normal day-to-day, or that like the stereotypical day-to-day life that we've come to feel is the way it should be, of the busyness and the grind and the hustle and the kind of, we can have it all but we have to do everything at hyperspeed 24/7 kind of space, to the thing I use with the meditation that I do is that kind of idea that we've got to be sat on a mountaintop somewhere, cross-legged, with our poses and being completely immersed in the moment. There's space in between for the steps that we need to take, and we need to find ways to take those steps. And if everything is like it's got to be this pinnacle of everything, it's impossible. It feels impossible.
Exactly. And so for me it's more about, okay, where can I get 2 minutes here and 10 minutes there throughout the day, and building in these good habits that kind of replenish my energy and my joy throughout the day, rather than expecting the day from start to finish to just be pure perfection. That for me, my day isn't going to look like that. I'm going to have lots of like petty frustrations and little micro arguments with the children over putting their shoes on, and it's like, instead of being like, oh well, so and so influencer on Instagram clearly doesn't have to put up with this in their perfect life, it's like, that's part of my life, and I can also have this moment of calm and contemplation, and then I can go and for me, I'm quite high energy, which for a long time was one of the reasons why I never did yoga teacher training until this year, because I'm like, oh, I'm not a calm Zen person. And I'm like, actually, who says who says yoga has to be completely calm Zen? That this idea that people who do meditation and yoga and those kind of things don't laugh.
Yeah.
Why would you do it if you're not having a great day?
Yeah. And it's interesting, really, isn't it? Because it is like we get bombarded with these kind of stereotypes of what something should be, and it's not until we start to consider how it can work for us and how it needs to be quiet and calm. So I like the idea that you can get in that quiet, calm Zen space if you want to, but I mean, I'm all about that kind of finding fun and finding joy and bringing that into your life. So if you can do that creative space stuff as well, absolutely, why not? So tell me a little bit more about like, because that's what held you back. So what shifted for you where you sort of said, actually, yes, I can do this, I can go on and do the yoga teaching stuff?
I mean, the specifically for yoga teaching, that was definitely the pandemic. When I was, just like had this moment of, yeah, why am I not going for something that I really want to do?
Yeah.
And at that point, I'd kind of come out of a bit of, so I had my second daughter, and had a bit of the baby blues afterwards. And I was referred for some talking therapy. I think it was cognitive behavioral therapy, but the waiting list was quite long.
Yeah.
And getting that referral was a bit of a kind of wake up call of like, yeah, I'm not in a good place right now. And so, and because I had quite a long waiting list, I wasn't just going to sit around and do nothing. So I signed up for some yoga classes. It was baby yoga, took my baby along, but I was like,
brilliant.
whenever I have a really good day, like I've normally done some yoga in that day, and if I were to design a great day, I would definitely have some yoga practice in there. So I was like, yeah, I need to up the ante on that front. And then I also signed up for, and it wasn't even life coaching. I actually signed up for like nutrition and health coaching, but all the mindset work that they did as part of that meant that when I got to my cognitive behavioral therapy sessions, they were like, oh, you're actually clinically no longer in need of this service. And I got discharged after like 2 sessions. And when I looked at it, it was like, oh, it's because of this coaching that I had. And then I started really getting into the coaching. And so that's when I was doing and when I really when something really works for me, I always take it. I always study to become like a teacher. I'm like, just give me. I
absolutely relate to that.
I need to know everything there is to know about this. I need to take this to the next level. So I started doing the coaching, and then obviously I started doing a lot of self-coaching. And then that was when I kind of reevaluated the whole my position on being a yoga teacher trainer and doing the teacher training, and the looked at what really is going on in my head, that I think that I can't do that. And and there had been a few practical aspects as well, like before the pandemic, the only way to like the level of yoga teacher training that I wanted to do to be able to be registered with certain bodies, you could only do that in certain ways. And that changed, which would have meant going somewhere for like 2-3 weeks minimum, like a really intensive out of my life for a few weeks, which I do still intend to do. But right now, as I said, with 2 kids at home, like I can't be like, well, best of luck with the kids, babe, I'll be back in 3 weeks. that simply wasn't an option for me at the moment. And so things did structurally change with the pandemic, but other things like that I had this once I'll practice yoga loads and loads and loads, and I'll basically starve myself until I'm like super skinny and I look like what you see on if you put in yoga, just pure yoga, into Instagram, you will see basically circus acts, like real extreme contortion of a very specific, very athletic body type. And I was like, well, yeah, one day I'll suddenly turn into that person, and then I'll go do my yoga teacher training. And I was like, that is and that's what I love about coaching, actually, that as soon as you as soon as you identify that thought, and you don't even, but often, like, I love it when a client says it out loud, and it almost like hangs in the air in front of them in this almost like cartoon neon flashing thing. And as soon as you said it, you're like, that is so ridiculous, what? And yet these thoughts, these things that we, that is something that I had been carrying around with me for ages, until I achieved a certain body, like literally had a complete body transplant.
But it's amazing, like you say, we all have these thoughts that are so deeply ingrained within us from wherever they've come from, which would be a whole entire new episode, but we've all got these thoughts, and like you say, it isn't until you sort of give them voice sometimes that you really sort of sit and go, that makes no sense. That actually makes no sense. There is no reason that this thing should stop me from doing this thing. But it does. It does for many people. And like you say, along your journey, that's happened. For me, along my journey, that it's happened. But this kind of doing this work and getting into that space, it does help you kind of unpick it and reframe it and put strategies in, doesn't it? So it's sort of being able to get it out there and kind of know that you're being held back by this thing, and then breaking it down and taking action, which is in its simplest form. There's a lot more to it, as you know, because it's the work that you do as well. So when you've unpacked this thought and you've got to the point, you've done your training, so how you said like you like the idea of the life coaching, you like the idea of the yoga, and that moment you sort of brought it all together. How's that been for you, bringing it together?
Fun, and it's been really creative. It's been challenging along the way as well, because there isn't a huge body of literature to call upon, and it's not something that there's, you know, hundreds or thousands of people currently practicing. So, you know, with that, you know, comes a little bit of that, well, who am I to be stepping off the, you know, why don't I just do yoga or just do life coaching? You know, there's definitely been moments like that, but for me it's been really interesting to bring together you know, and it has been that study of being like, okay, well, where do I see these like similarities? So at the moment I'm investigating, so within yoga and like many kind of philosophies and religions and things like that, there's, you know, this is what living a good life looks like, you know. So there's a number of suggestions, and at the moment I'm focusing on so within the 8 limbs of yoga, the first 2 are the yamas and the niyamas, and I'm going to really squish it down into like really simple 1-sentence explanation, which is obviously, you know, very reductive, but just to kind of get the point. And they are sort of the do's and the don'ts, you know, the things to add into your life and the things to try and take away from your life. So, you know, the really famous one is ahimsa, you know, the do no harm, which is why, you know, well, lots of people think of yogis as being, you know, vegans and all that kind of thing. So harm is one of the ones that you would take out, and, you know, there's things that you add in, and of course now that I'm saying them, they literally just like flew out of my ear.
I have the same thing. Like, I can know things inside out. And as soon as I'm asked a question about it, I suddenly become incapable of speech and incapable of accessing that thing in your brain, because you embody it and you do it, and it's different, isn't it, when you start having these kind of conversations where you're in your brain about it all. So if it pops back in, just shout it out at me.
So, you know, and I think that having these things can form, you know, particularly for people who, you know, life coaching has become very and coaching in general has become very popular, and understandably so. Like, I think that, you know, for me, I've seen great transformation in my life, and now I wouldn't be without a coach, because I do think like it's the power of speaking out loud those thoughts, you know, and it's just having someone to kind of just help you say them out loud, because as soon as you say them out loud, their power just diminishes almost to nothing. But, you know, and then you can, you know, they come back, but you keep working on them. But for me, adding in the kind of the yoga philosophy helps to provide like a bit of a pathway. So particularly for people who found themselves in a place where their life isn't giving them quite the satisfaction or the enjoyment, or, you know, just that kind of like, wow, I did everything. You know, if you look at where you've got to and what you've achieved, and you're like, I thought I would be, you know, happier.
Following the path that we traditionally expect to take. I think there's, you know, I'm mid-40s, and I find a lot of women my age have kind of got to that space where they've done the serious relationship, maybe had children if that's what they want in life, or and have followed a career path, and then get to that stage of, I've got all of this stuff, but I'm missing that thing that lights me up. And,
you know, I've definitely worked with people who know specifically exactly what it is that they want to work on, but for people who are just like, I just feel meh and I want
Yeah.
to I want to change, but I'm not sure, and part of, coaching is to help get to that point. But I love that bringing in the yoga philosophy, which is, it's it's like 5,000 years old, like when it was written down, and before it got to the point of being written down, like there's a lot of wisdom about the human condition there. So like, why reinvent the wheel? Let's start by looking at, these are, this is a package of stuff that like is a great starting point. If you would, and almost like if you were to score yourself, where are you, where can we work on, and see how that impacts your life. And for me, that's working really well. And it's really, it's exciting because it is new. It's, that's not something that you can see everywhere or get everywhere. And it's a really interesting and exciting journey to take that. And for me as well, that kind of stuff you don't get in a yoga class very much. Sometimes these things get talked about a little bit, and I'm like, whenever they do, I'm always like, oh, that sounds really interesting. So for me, it's really nice to take those ideas and really work with them and apply them to people's lives and be like, how is, and see the change and see the transformation, and be part of that is really humbling and exciting.
So what does working with you look like then? Is it one-to-one? Is it group work, or is it a combination of things?
Yeah, so at the moment I have one-to-one clients, and I am working on a membership container. Like, I'm not really, it's a bit of a funny thing to explain, but because
I know, I've got my self-care club, and it's trying to, that will have launched when this comes out. It is trying to explain what that kind of envelops is quite difficult, isn't it, when it's this sort of more mental, emotional kind of connection work.
Exactly. And I think the one-on-one is really great for the, the intensive, and particularly when you're like, I really need to, make it, when you feel like I just need to change stuff, like that frame of mind when someone might be in just before they like chop off all their hair or something like that. When you're in that frame of mind, I think the one-on-one and the intensive stuff is really great. But as I mentioned, earlier about being, fitting this stuff into your life, about, these changing your life isn't about, a 8-week intensive birth. It's about making those changes so that every day you are incorporating these things and consistently. And so, I think it's the day-to-day that you existence that really makes up those blocks of weeks and months and years that is the entirety of your life. And so I wanted something that was a bit more again, sort of like short bursts of of being able to just be like, oh, okay, a 10-minute thing here, or even just like a 2-minute mindful activity, that kind of thing, so that it could be more sustainable, like sustainable long term, and become more of an automatic habit over time. So yeah, they're the two main ways at the moment. More will be coming.
Of course. And that's the thing, it's as I'm sure the same as me, as you evolve in your own practice, your practice evolves as you get more into the bits that resonate, and the messaging and the things that you want to share. The practice of how you work with clients changes and evolves, because that is for me what it's all about. Life, it's that evolution and that change, and working out what works best for you, and like you said, the little bits that fit into life and make life joyful and how you want it to be, you then share that along with your client work. So do you do actual yoga in a session? Is it talking? Is it yoga? Is it a bit of both? Completely different to what I'm imagining.
So obviously I am a trained yoga teacher, so I don't want to use the word prescribe, but I suggest like short sequences that might help after a coaching session. So it is very much talking. It is a coaching session in the time that we have, but I do incorporate, and sometimes I will bring in like a breathing exercise as part of it. So some of the pranayama, yeah, the yoga postures that people will think of when they think of yoga, which is only one of those 8 limbs.
Yeah.
So the postures, the breathing, and some meditation, they're things I kind of suggest for after our session, but I can and do suggest specific
Yeah.
postures or sequences following, whatever's happened. So if somebody has like a really great breakthrough and is feeling, sometimes you can feel quite shook
Yeah.
when you're sitting like, oh my goodness. Like, if whatever has come up for that person, then I can certainly suggest, hey, look, how about a sequence of these restorative poses that will particularly help afterwards with, I think although coaching is in your head, like you do feel things and you feel your emotions in your body and in different places. So I certainly will incorporate those poses and bringing more, yoga, but it's certainly nobody has to bring a mat to a session. It's very much
No, yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to kind of picture in my mind, because like you say, it's that. So what I feel is that it's the yoga philosophies and the yoga kind of way of living informs your practice,
yeah
in that the way in which you work with clients. And then you've got that, so it's talking within the time that you're together, but there's the other bits where you can embody what the client can use that as an embodiment practice to really pull into or feel into where they're feeling their feelings within their body, and release it using the breathing, the meditation, and the yoga poses. Am I understanding
exactly
you?
Yes, absolutely. So the philosophy is like the teachings and philosophies of yoga are kind of like the pathway, and we're going to travel down, like that's a map that's already been written for us, and then I take you down that pathway using coaching techniques to apply it to your personal situation, and then bring in the other stuff as needed, as appropriate along that journey.
So typically, who would come to you to work with you?
I like, as I mentioned, like lots of people who come to other people who are coaching curious. Like they've seen a lot about coaching, they've heard a lot about coaching. But I remember like years and years ago, I really wanted to do acupuncture. But I didn't have an ailment, and that is very like, it's medicine, isn't it? And I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, I can't have acupuncture. Like, oh no, I don't have a bad back or whatever. And so a lot of people who would like to try, who've heard about people getting amazing results with coaching, but aren't like, oh, this is the exact problem that I want to resolve. There's people might go to, there's business coaches and there's relationship coaches, and so for people who do want that life coaching, and also people who want something or who feel that they are missing maybe some of that kind of spirituality in their life, that connection to something bigger, and funnily enough, not many people are like what you would imagine as like epic yogis. Like nobody turns up in like Lululemon and like popping their leg behind their back, and I've had clients who've never done yoga at all in their life, and I think that's it. That's for me. I think it's great to be able to bring those ideas to a wider audience, because a lot of people think of yoga as a fitness or exercise, and because you can do it at a gym.
One of my first episodes, I had a wonderful yoga teacher come and speak with me, and that's what I realized, that I'd only really, even though I do meditation and I use that in my practice, I'd only considered yoga as a physical activity. I hadn't married up that the spiritual elements of myself and my practice with something that I used to do as an exercise thing. And so that was really interesting. That's one of the things I love about the podcast, is that I can make these connections between, well, of course, I mean, that makes absolute sense. Like, it's not just a physical thing. I mean, at its core, it's not a physical thing, really, is it? At its core.
It's interesting. Like the asanas, there's lots of things I said about them. I mean, a yoga practice is of the asana, the postures, is almost like a moving meditation.
Yeah.
And it is, and to me it's almost like a mindfulness activity as well, of getting yourself into that position, and then focusing on how your body feels in that position. And then there's also this school of thought that the postures are there to essentially prepare your body to be able to sit and meditate for long periods of time. And that it's a physical practice to get yourself ready to be able to sit still, because if you're new to it and you attempt to sit down to meditate, then you feel so twitchy and you want to scratch everything, you want to move. Like, it doesn't take very long of sitting in the same position before, like, you want to move or do something, like your body is like, I feel like I'm seizing up. So the asana is partly the preparation for meditation, as well as itself being a form of meditation. It's a connection. I mean, yoga means union, and it's union to that bigger thing, but that connection to yourself is that connection to the bigger thing. Because we are all part of the magic of the universe.
And it does, once you start to unpick it and kind of open the mind a little bit from the stereotypes of how things are presented to us, it started to make much more sense. And what I've started to realize is there's a lot of practices that I do that I didn't know had a name. They're other things, they're labeled as things, they're just things that I do that I've fallen into because of this is my area of interest, and I do as part of my self-care. And as I'm starting to talk to people and have these conversations and explore different philosophies, it's like, oh, but I already do that, so that's the name for the thing that I do. And we've got this inherent knowing within us, but sometimes we need a practitioner or that information or somebody that is specialized to be able to help us tap into it in a deeper level. So I think it's really interesting, the idea of bringing the yoga and the coaching stuff together. I'm excited to see what you do with it all as you kind of move forward.
And I just think it's the human condition hasn't changed, like, over time. Sure, we've got new technology now, but the things that kept people up at night, the things that meant that at whatever age you are on your deathbed, you look back and think, God, these are the mistakes I made, or this is where I spent time well, hasn't changed over thousands of years. And so all the old philosophies and old religions, like, they've all got stuff that everything that they're recommending is stuff that ultimately leads to a life that feels well lived. And whichever you can look at any major, anything that has stood the test of time because it's got these nuggets of wisdom in it, and we fall, and I don't want to be anti-science at all, because I love science. My mum was a high school science teacher, all that stuff. But science is only catching up. There's stuff like mindfulness. There's been lots of scientific studies recently, in the past kind of 20 years, around how effective mindfulness is. That's thousands of years old, and that we're only just now we're looking at scientifically, why does that work? But we're
starting to prove the knowledge we already know. So it's that,
exactly.
So it is that, and that, again, that's a whole nother, I think that's a whole nother podcast and a whole big space that we could take up talking about that.
It's exciting, and I've picked yoga because it's just something that for me works. But you could pick anything, I think, and start to apply it. But for me, it's super exciting to put it into practice and to use these new. I mean, not that is coaching new, I don't know, but
I started coaching about 13 years ago, so I guess it's new in the history of the world, but not really.
But this sort of new, and a lot of coaching now is backed by science and positive psychology, and I love learning about neuroscience and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like applying these modern ideas to ideas that are like really old for me, I love. And again, that falls into that whole balance, you know, the old and the new. And
yeah, and it makes absolute sense. So what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned in your field?
I think it's that you're like, through all this, I've come to realize that my thoughts and my feelings about something are not fixed in time and space, and that you can change how you think and feel about things, you know, which is again not a new concept. And I think I remember there was one time when it just kind of clicked for me. And you know, all the motivational quotes and all the positive thinking stuff that had just felt like statements, all of a sudden it felt really profound afterwards. I was like, oh, I can change my thoughts and my feelings.
Yeah.
But you know, they feel like a truth. You know, and in a moment when you have an emotional response to something or a thought about something, it can feel like the truth of a situation. And whilst it is true that you feel that right now, that might not necessarily be how you feel about it. And it also doesn't have to be how, you know, it doesn't have to be how you choose to feel about it. And for me, that's been a huge learning through coaching and my yoga practice, how to change how I think and feel about things is really transformational, because that has changed the results that I'm getting in my life. It's changed how I approach my relationships. I'm surprised it's not taught in schools, you know.
We're starting to see more kind of mindfulness practice, I think, in some schools now, and that I think is a really positive step. So it's hopefully, as like you say, as the science and the intellectual thinking is catching up with the thought and the sense and the energy space that other people are occupying, we'll start to see more acceptance and understanding of how these practices enhance life, because it's only about adding to the quality of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I can go into
how do you live a good life? You know, there's lots of, I mean, it's one of the main philosophical questions of humanity, isn't it? How do you live a good life? But I do think that when you accept the first thought and feeling that you have about something, then, you know, I don't think that you're necessarily, then you're very much, it's potluck on, you know, how other people have modeled thinking and feeling. So you know, if you are fortunate enough to have really fantastic resilient thinking and positive outlook, then maybe you can get through life without having to reevaluate and make these choices. But you know, I think a lot of us, you know, haven't always had that. And so the first thought that, you know, that can come through, you know, I hear a lot of my mum's critical statements, you know, that can often be the first thought that comes through my head, you know, and now I can be like, well, thanks, mum, but actually
and that's it, isn't it? It's that learning your own truth and finding your own voice in it all. We all adapt survival techniques, and there comes a point where they've served us well, they've helped us get to where we are, and that we've needed them, but there comes a point where we can thank them for their service, but let them go and learn new ways of moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that for me has been my biggest life lesson, and one that I want to share with the world.
Thank you. Well, that feels like a really good place to end, if that's okay, because I do like to ask people to share what they want to share with the world, and you have done that there, unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, that feels like a great place to call it a day. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this. My eyes at the corners are actually hurting a little bit from smiling so much.
Well, I'm going to take that as a compliment. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed speaking with you and sharing a bit about your practice and the work that you're doing and what you're wanting to share into the world. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity. I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to listen.
Thank you. Thank you to those that have listened today. I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. To find out more about me and my guests, give feedback, suggestions, visit srtt.co.uk. We'll be back next Wednesday with a new guest. Until then, stay curious and be kind to yourself.